Hare Krishna, Gurave Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Tadaraye, Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namo Namaha. Okay, so we're continuing with Sri Manah Siksha by Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. So it is a very wonderful book, small book, and it is important for the sadhakas, for the devotees trying to advance in spiritual life. There are 12 verses. All of them, of course, are important, but the first verse is very much essential for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and a verse to be remembered. And we will recite the first verse now, and then we will go to the fourth verse. Second and third we also already discussed. Just to revise important verses, they should be revised regularly so that we do not forget. Especially the devotees who are preaching, they should be well versed, and when they're preaching they should be able to quote from Shastra. Gurau goste gostalishu sujane busuragane samantra Sri Namni Vrajanava Yuvadvandva Sharane Sada Dambam Hitva Kururatim Apurvam Atitaram Aye Swantar Bratash Chatubir Abhiyache Dritapada. Addressing the mind, Raghunath Das Goswami, for our benefit. My dear mind, I'm begging to you, I'm grabbing your feet, Dritapada, with all determination. Sadadambahita, please give up all pride. And Kururatim, please, with all affection, Rati, transcendental attachment, remember and respect Guru, the spiritual master, Goste, Braj, Gostalishu, the Brijvasis, Sujane, the saintly devotees, the devotees in general, Busuragane, the Brahmanas, and have great attachment, Swamantra, Sri Namni. Sri Namni means the holy names, the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Swamantra, that refers to the Gayatri mantras for those who have second initiation. Most important is always the chanting of the holy names, also non-different from the divine couple, also known as Yugal mantra ultimately, the Mahamantra. Radha Krishna Jugal are there. Therefore also here, Brajanava, Yuvadvandva Sharane, taking shelter of the youthful divine couple of Braj. So in Srinam, the Mahamantra is no different from Radha Krishna. Hari referring to Radharani. Krishna to Krishna, and Ram also refers to Krishna, who is performing wonderful pastimes with Srimati Radharani. Therefore is known as Radhika Raman, And Swa mantra, so the Gayatri mantra is also no different from the Lord. There's a Krishna Gayatri, no different from Krishna. There's a Gaur Gayatri, no different from Mahaprabhu. So each personality, for each personality is a Gayatri. There's a Gayatri. So that is the first verse. Tendency for the conditioned soul is to forget, especially in the age of Kali. Intelligence is not very sharp, the memory is not very good, and one can live up to 100 years usually in general, but even this is difficult nowadays. But one has to try to, despite all the shortcomings which are there, all the difficulties, one has to try to fix the lotus feet, fix the mind on the lotus feet of Guru, Gauranga, and Krishna. So in the first verse, first Guru is explained, and the Vaishnavas, and then Radha Krishna. In the second, explaining about that we should take shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, always remember him. And that is no different from Sri Radha and Krishna. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Nahayanya. And so, instructing the mind that one has to take shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and also the spiritual master Mukunda Preshta, who is very dear to Mukunda, Krishna, the giver of liberation. And of course in this verse also mentioning that one should not be attached to simply doing dharma, what to speak of being engaged in adharma, sinful life. So one has to follow dharma, but not just ordinary dharma, which may be external, like Vana Ashram dharma, but one has to be engaged in Vastav dharma, Sanatan dharma, Nitya dharma, that is transcendental loving service to Sri Radha and Krishna in Braj. Braje Radha Krishna Prachur Paricharyam. Paricharya refers specifically to the worship of the Lord in the temple. Paricharya refers to Ditya worship. Prachur, plenty, fully. Prachur bhav. Fully, profusely one should be engaged in serving the divine couple. But as explained here, remembering always Satyanandana Gaura Hari, because without His mercy, in the age of Kali, it is difficult to approach the divine couple. Patita Pavana Hetu Tavavatar. So Mahaprabhu came to deliver the most fallen. In the age of Kali, everyone is fallen. So the third verse was there. So he's mentioning, if you actually want to be engaged in the transcendental loving service of Sri Radha and Krishna, and then you have to approach actually the associates, and you have to remember them, the associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he's mentioning specifically Sarup Damodar, and then Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, but also mentioning the other devotees. So Sarup Damodar, and we have to understand that as sadhakas, so we are here now as sadhakas, and by the mercy of the Spiritual Master is a representative of Nityananda, Mahaprabhu, Balaram, Krishna, Srimati Radharani. We have to take shelter of him. And then we have to take shelter of the previous acharyas, especially Rupa Goswami. and then Sarup Damodar. So the Leelas are there of the Lord in the spiritual realm, and we are aspiring for the highest destination, that is Golok Dham. At the same time also we would like to enter the pastimes in Chaitanya Navadvip, where Mahaprabhu is eternally residing. So these are the Nitya Leelas, the eternal pastimes are there, also known as the Ashtakaliya Leela. So the goal is to enter these pastimes. In order to become acquainted with that and become qualified, we have to then hear about the pastimes of Mahaprabhu, Ashtakaliya Leela, and Radha and Krishna eventually. And so we have to pray so we may become qualified. But as sadhakas, first of all also we have to hear about the pastimes of the Lord in this world, known as Prakat Leela, Naimitiki Leela, as mentioned about Mahaprabhu, the Chaitanya Chatamrita. And then for Sri Radha Krishna, of course, the 10th canto is there, and the pastimes are mentioned from Krishna's appearance, staying in Braj, and then going to Mathura and Dwarka. So specifically, in order to be able to approach Mahaprabhu, and we can see in the Leela, Prakat Leela, in order to, when Mahaprabhu was in Jagannath Puri, in order to be able to approach him, one had to go through Sarup Damodar. Without the mercy of Sarup Damodar, nobody could practically come close to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So therefore here it is mentioned by Ranganath Das Goswami that we should take shelter of Sarup Damodar, and those who are very dear to the Lord and to Sarup Damodar, especially Rupa Goswami, and the other Goswamis also, but we are known as Rupanuga Vaishnavas, following Rupa Goswami as sadhakas. And then after everything, shelter of Rupa Goswami and Sarup Damodar, then we may think of being able to take shelter of Rupa Manjari, Rupa Goswami, Krishna Lila Rupa Manjari, and then Sarup Damodar in Krishna Lila Lalita Devi. And then there's a chance of serving the divine couple. So spiritual life is the reality. Vastav Jivan. Krishna is Vastav Vastu, the real object, our Ishtadev. So whatever is mentioned here is for our benefit. So we should take shelter of Sarup Damodar as sadhakas in this life. And then there's a chance that in the next life we may be able to ultimately be there in Gaur Lila, and then we can be in Krishna Lila also. So verse number 4. Asadvaktavesha visrija mati sarvasva harani katamukti vyagryana shinukila sarvatmagilani apityaktva lakshmi patiratim iti vyoma nayanim braje radha krishna sarati manidhautam bhaja manaha. So here, addressing Manaha, Bhaja Manaha, addressing the mind. Oh my dear brother mind, please abandon altogether the prostitute of contemptible mundane talk, which plunders the entire treasure of pure wisdom. You must equivocally give up hearing all talk of impersonal liberation, which like a tigress devours your very soul. Furthermore, please abandon even the attachment to Lakshmipati, Sri Narayana, which leads to Vaikuntha. You should live in Braj and worship Sri Radha Krishna, who bestow upon devotees the precious jewel of love for them. So, Mati sarva saharani asadvarta vesha. So vesha, so that refers to prostitutes. So mundane talk, so that is actually very detrimental. And so so therefore it is explained or compared to a prostitute, because the prostitute is actually, if a person is having some lusty desires, and then, well, so he may approach a prostitute, but that is, as we know, that is actually not proper for any respectable man trying to advance in spiritual life to approach a prostitute. First of all, if one is desiring to have the association of a woman, or is feeling lusty desires, if he's young, which is natural, of course, even lusty desires may be there even for those who are elder. Even one time there was a king, that is explained, and he was asking his advisor, one of his brahmanas, because previously the kings, they were always acting under the guidance of the brahmanas, ministers who were well versed in the scriptures. So he was asking his advisor, brahmana, so when these lusty desires will go away? So the brahmana was saying that will stay till the end of life. And the king was saying, but if one is old, then how the lusty desires can still be there? Then one cannot even, and then enjoy, not possible. But then the brahmana was saying, his advisor, no, even till the end of life it will be there. I will show you, you just wait, after some time I will show you. So after a few days he called the king and he told the king that you come with me, we will see one dying person. So the king, he had a young daughter. So he said, princess, so he said, so now we will go to see an old man, he's about to die. We will go together, you and me, and you bring your daughter. And then you should see where he will look, the old man, the dying man. So they went there to the dying man, and he was carefully looking at the eyes of the old person. And he saw that he immediately looked at his young daughter instead of the brahmana or the king. So that is the situation in this material world. And so one has to be very careful, and one has to be under the guidance of the spiritual master, be under the shelter of the spiritual master, and pray to the spiritual master, to Mahaprabhu, so that one may be able to be saved from unnecessary attachment in this material world and going the wrong path. And here, so it is plundering, the mundane tongue, the prostitute of mundane tongue is plundering the wealth of wisdom. And the saintly persons, brahmacharis or even brahmanas, they have wisdom. But if somehow due to previous impressions or due to inattention, they become attracted to a prostitute, then the wisdom will be lost. Also, Bilva Mangal Thakur's example is there. He was a Brahmana. He was married, but still, somehow he became attracted to a prostitute. Actually, because the prostitute was not ordinary, she was also a devotee. And then she told him one time, why you come to difficulties? One time there were... Okay. So Bilva Mangal Thakur, so he became attracted, but then this prostitute told him that despite the rain and there was a storm and you're coming to see me, so this ignorance is good, but not to come and see me, but rather with this eagerness you should try to approach the Supreme Lord. And so then he realized his mistake, he just left everything and he was going towards Vrindavan. But even on the way, again also he became attracted to a woman who was fetching water from a well, and he was going behind her. And she was going home, she was married. And then, so she told her husband, there's one person is following me. And then, as he came to the door of the Brahmana, so Bilva Mangal was there, and so he asked him, what do you want? I just would like to get something from your wife. And then he said, okay, come. And then, so he was there also, and then he asked for the pin of the wife's hair. And then he took that and he plucked out his eyes. So, but of course even, so the prostitute, usually if one is going to a prostitute, then he has to pay money. So then his wealth will be lost. So one has to be very careful. So mundane talk is so dangerous. And we can see, practically speaking, if one is, there's two kinds of talk. One is Krishna Katha and one is Gramya Katha. Talks about Krishna, that should be there. Other talks, they should be given up, as Mahaprabhu also told Raghunath Das Goswami. Gramya Vatana Sunibe, Gramya Vatana Kahibe. You don't hear this mundane talk and you don't speak. So that is very detrimental. If you talk about mundane things, Gramya Katha things, what happened with the family, or even what is happening in the temple, unnecessary talk, then actually that will deviate you from the path of perfection. But we can see practically for householders in normal life, many times we can see so much Gramya Katha is there. And even in the temple, many times you can see amongst the brahmacharis even, so much unnecessary talk is there, which is very detrimental. So therefore, the strong words are given here. This mundane talk, this Gramya Katha is just like a prostitute. By indulging in that, then all the wisdom is maybe lost. So one has to be very careful regarding that. But so Krishna Katha should be there. Glorification of the Lord, glorification of the devotees. And never criticize others. Unless one is in a position, the spiritual master, a teacher, or parents, they have to take care of their dependents and have to also see what is right and wrong and have to tell them. But otherwise, there's no need to point out the faults of others, especially if one is not able to correct or to help in a certain way. Then there's no use. Even it is mentioned that actually if you're seeing the fault in others and you're thinking about that and you're speaking about that, that will come to you. So that is very detrimental. Whereas if you glorify the pure devotees, you speak about the wonderful qualities of a pure devotee, then these qualities can come to you. And then you can also become a pure devotee. So that is an important instruction to the mind. And basically we know whatever the acharyas have told, that is actually what Mahaprabhu told them. As Mahaprabhu had told Raghunath Das Goswami, don't hear this mundane talk and don't speak. Don't eat palatable foodstuffs and don't wear nice dress, opulent dress. Be very simple. Simple living, high thinking. And then after he's saying, Sarvatma Gilani Mukti Vyagriya Kata. Talk of liberation is a tigress that devours the soul. And Vyagra means a tiger. Vyagriya, that is a tigress. Vyagra is a tiger, Vyagriya is a tigress. So one should, of course, as devotees, generally, we do not talk about impersonal liberation, Sayujya Mukti. And we know that the absolute truth is Krishna is a personal form. And so from one point of view, that danger may not be there. At the same time, if you go a little deeper, we should analyze, or we should try to see our heart and our consciousness. Are we really personal with Krishna in our dealings with Krishna, in serving the deities, or Krishna Nam? Krishna Nam are not different. So while chanting Krishna Nam, are we remembering Krishna's beautiful form? There is an exchange with Krishna? Or is it just nothing there? Nothing means some kind of impersonal conception, just chanting Hare Krishna, but nothing is there. And even in the dealings, so not only with the deities, but amongst the devotees, so one has to be very personal, very loving, not impersonal. So therefore we also have to be careful to some extent that we act properly, that our thoughts are positive, pure, and personal in regards to Krishna, in regards to the devotees. And then our speaking will also be in the same way. And then our dealings will also be in the same way. It all starts actually with the consciousness. Therefore we have to try to control the mind, as Krishna is telling to Arjuna also in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And if the mind is controlled, then is our best friend. If the mind is not controlled, is our greatest enemy. But it's not easy to control the mind, so therefore, as Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada used to say, we have to beat the mind in the morning 100 times with the shoe and 100 times with the stick in the evening. Or you can do 100 times in the morning with a stick and 100 times with the shoe in the evening, figuratively. But that will not do, so therefore he is giving these instructions. And because simply chastising or beating, just like a child, you cannot do. Or one who is subordinate, you cannot just beat or chastise. But one has to be very loving, personal, and speak very nicely. And then one can win the heart of the child or the dependent. Similarly, by speaking nicely to the mind, so the mind can also cooperate. So, yeah. But if it's not listening, then we just have to neglect the mind also. So there's trying to control by some beating, and then by speaking nicely or by neglect. But somehow the mind has to be controlled. And so here the Siksha, there are instructions to the mind. So that is the second point here. And then the third point is mentioning Vyoma Nayani Lakshmi Patirati. Love for Lakshmi Pati Narayan, who is residing in Paravyom. Paravyom refers to Vaikuntha. And Narayan is worshipable, and similarly Lakshmi Devi. We have all respect for them. However, we are trying to follow Sri Rupa, Rupa Goswami, and so we are in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. And our goal is to attain Braj. So therefore, we may respect Lakshmi Narayan, we may respect Sita, Ram, and even Rukmini Dwarkadesh. And sometimes in some elaborate ceremonies, like in installing temples, or even sometimes in marriage ceremony, then Lakshmi Narayan may be worshipped in the simple way. But at the same time, still, the main attachment and dedication and love should be towards Sri Radha and Krishna, especially internally. Externally, so we may also sometimes worship Lakshmi Narayan. Externally, we have to do so many things which have nothing to do with us as spirit soul and the seva of Krishna. I mean, every day we have to go to the bathroom, and the dirty business is done there, and then we have to take a shower, and every day we spend so much time in sleeping and in eating. Of course, you're honoring prasadam, but sometimes it is, taking too much time, and so therefore that should be reduced, eating and sleeping. But artificially also it cannot be done. So many things we are doing which actually have nothing to do with us as spirit soul, but they have to be done, otherwise and the body will not function. And if we are not advanced, then we cannot properly do our sadhana bhajan. So what to speak then as sadhakas? We have to do different ceremonies for householders, and the Dashavida Samskar, and for example 10 samskars are there, purificatory rites, or 16 may be mentioned also, or even more. So that has to be done, and there many times so Lakshmi Narayan may also be respected. So sadhakas we may do that, and there's no harm. But the main focus should be on Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Radha and Krishna. So that we have to clearly understand. One time there was one Brijvasi here, and he was worshipping Radha Krishna. And then somehow was thinking, let me go to Dwarka. It would be nice to go to Dwarka there. And then somehow all the devotees were here, and they were just discussing, we want to go to Dwarka. You want to come with us? And he was saying, yes. And so then they went to Dwarka. And then had darshan there. And in some places in South India, even in Northern India, in Dwarka also. So the followers of Dwarkadish or Lakshmi Narayan, they have the stamps. And they put stamps on the shoulders of the shank, the kanchal or the chakra, the Sudarshan chakra. But that should not be done for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas who want to take full shelter of Sri Radha and Krishna. But others were doing, and he was thinking, well, let me also just do that. And he stamped his body here with the kanch and the chakra. And then, some satisfaction was there. I went to Dwarka, And then he came back, but somehow already on the way back, so his meditation was not very strong. And it was difficult for him to remember Radha and Krishna. So he came back and he was meditating and trying to meditate on Radha and Krishna, but it was just simply not happening. And then he was trying to associate with the other Brijavasis who were fully dedicated to Radha Krishna. But then they're all taking some distance from him. And then he was wondering what is happening. And then one Vaishnava told him, why did you put these stamps of the Shankha and the Chakra? So as Gaudiya, as Vaishnavas of Radha Krishna, that is actually not to be done. After that he was understanding his mistake, and then he was simply crying and crying and crying, feeling separation from Sri Radha Krishna. So much so that after a few days he gave up his body. And then he may have, of course, taken birth again, and because the Lord is merciful also, and then he may have continued with his bhajan of Radha Krishna. So, but we have to be careful that we are not deviated. So we are talking here about the mind, which is the only problem in our life, is our own mind. There's no other problem. Although the mind or the consciousness will say, oh, because of this devotee, because of these circumstances, I'm struggling now. But ultimately it is only the mind which is not fixed on the lotus feet of Krishna, or the lotus feet of Mahaprabhu. And because of this, there's so much struggle. So we have to be very careful of the material mind and try to control with higher intelligence. And not even with material intelligence, it is difficult to control the mind, but with spiritual intelligence, by praying to Guru Gauranga Krishna to give us this spiritual intelligence, so that we can be properly situated on transcendental plane and properly engaged, and then we can, by the mercy of the Lord, be free from the influence of the material false ego, the material intelligence, and especially the material mind, which is very flickering. What's happening is going on. And the next point, Swarati Manida. So if you're engaged in the service of the Lord under the direction of the spiritual master, then actually we can be blessed with this transcendental sentiment of loving attachment, rati, towards the divine couple. And we actually have to pray for that. And then it is possible to become free from this material influence, for the material consciousness, and remain fixed on the transcendental platform. So the pure devotee is always automatically attracted to Krishna. So it is not possible for a pure devotee, the eternal associates, to come under the influence of modes of material nature. And even for those who are highly advanced, the sadhakas, who have come to the highest stage of devotional service, asakti and bhav, uttamavastha, they are protected by the Lord. And they may not face these difficulties. So basically, of course, Raghunath Das Goswami is speaking that to all the sadhakas, And unless and until one is fully realized on the platform of Swarup Siddhi, when one has realized one's Swarup, one always has to be careful of the mind. Because the mind is very tricky. Even if one is already advanced, still the mind, with the influence of the modes of material nature, will try to bring down the sadhaka. So we have to be very careful. But the more advanced the devotee is, the more he is able to be aloof from this material consciousness. He is situated on the platform of the soul, and there is no bautika hankar, false ego, material false ego. I'm this, I'm that. So which even the devotees in the beginning stage, or even sometimes in the medium stage, still they have this also ahankar, although Krishna may be there to some extent and they may be engaged in devotional service, but then still the ahankar may be there. I'm the best book distributor, I'm the president of the temple. So therefore in the first verse, so therefore we always have to go back to that also, sada dambam hitvam, always giving up this pride that I'm something special. So, but the false ego is there, the material mind is there, trying to impress us that we are something special, but we are completely insignificant. That we have to realize. And then when one is properly situated, then one may be able to get the jewel then one may receive the jewel of love for the divine couple. And of course, the jewel of love for them that comes from the Supreme Lord Himself, from Radha Krishna themselves. Sarati Manida. They're giving this jewel of pure love for them. Or Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But we have to endeavor. We have to endeavor. And by our endeavor, when the Lord is seeing that we are constantly endeavoring on the right path, under the guidance of the pure devotee, their dear servant, then ultimately, so we will receive this precious jewel of love of them. So constant endeavor has to be there. And then we will get a little mercy. Then we can endeavor and advance more. Then we get a little more mercy. And then ultimately we will be able to get this precious jewel of love for them. So, but that is only on the highest stage of asakti, bhav, that it will be received, the complete mercy. So all these verses, so they are important and to be meditated upon regularly. So therefore the devotees, they should, of course so many books are there and usually there's not even enough time to study all the books or to speak of reading them again and again. But some things we have to do regularly. And just like, for example, the Bhagavad Gita may be there and we may have read the Bhagavad Gita 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times already. And then at one point we may feel we have to read some other books also, so read the Bhagavatam and then Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nectar of Devotion. We may read also more than one time. We should actually. But then also even Prabhupada mentioned about his other books, and so one of them is Manah Siksha also. And because the mind is very stubborn, the mind is very tricky, the material mind. Therefore we have to try to conquer the mind, and so we have to instruct the mind, we have to train the mind to be properly engaged in the loving service of the Lord. So from time to time, so this book can be studied and one can meditate upon these wonderful verses. Especially the first one is very important. But then the other ones also, they should be remembered sometimes, or we may read sometimes, or we may hear, or we may repeat that sometimes. And so that is beneficial for the conditioned soul, who is troubled usually by the mind only. So that is ultimately the only difficulty is one's own mind in spiritual life, ultimately. Because the mind, if the mind is trained to think about Krishna, Savai Manah Krishna Padada Vindayor, as Ambarish Maharaj was doing, fixes his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, and then automatically the senses are engaged, all the senses, speaking about Krishna, hearing about Krishna, smelling the incense which has been offered to the Lord, engaging the hands in serving the deities, touching the deities, dressing the deities, or cooking for the Lord, or the legs in walking to the temple, to the holy places. So all these senses, the knowledge inquiring senses, the working senses, they have to be engaged positively in the service of the Lord. So in this way, one becomes purified in existence, and by doing that, then we can realize ourselves as being completely different from this gross and subtle body, and then we can realize Krishna's wonderful form, his transcendental form, and his associates, and Mahaprabhu's associates. And that is actually the goal of life, to develop this love for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and for the divine couple. So by constant endeavor and by receiving the mercy of Hari Guru and Vaishnavas, so eventually it will be possible. But one has to remain enthusiastic, fixed, and one has to be patient, always engaged in devotional activities, in the association of the devotees who are more advanced. Hare Krishna. Any question? The question is there? Huh?
Is there a question?
No question there?
But is there any category of Gramya Katha?
Is there any category of Gramya Katha?
Like in our other things, we have a list of things. This should not be done. Because mind is this much powerful, its effect. When we start even doing worship also, then in the meantime, it takes us somewhere else also.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
is there any kind of like list of those Gramya Katha or category or something? It's
List of Gramya Katha and category? There's an endless list, yeah.
okay.
Well, basically, the Gramya Katha, so these are talks which are not related to Krishna, or these are things which are not important actually in life. And there may be so many things which may be there which are not important. So therefore we have to use our intelligence, and we have to be careful, because the mind is so tricky, and it will try to suggest some things to us, tell us some things, and it may seem to be of some value, of some importance. So we have to be careful And because, for example, we may see some difficulty there in the service, and then we try to solve the problem. But we have to analyze it carefully from different angle of vision. So, and sometimes we may think that because of this person, he did like this, and therefore things are not working out. So the material energy, external energy is very, very strong, and so Mahadevi is very much trying to bring down the sadhaka, so we have to be careful. And so we have to pray for the good intelligence, spiritual intelligence, so we can discriminate and we can understand what is right and what is wrong. So many kinds of Gramaikata there, definitely. I mean, there's an endless list, you may say. But we have to pray for the good intelligence, transcendental intelligence. So we may differentiate between what is a real life, what is necessary for us, what is important for us, and that we should accept, and what is not so important, what is unnecessary, what is detrimental, that we have to give up. Sometimes, of course, we have to know what is happening in this material world, for example. And now, for example, who is the President of America? Elections were there. I mean, we have to have some knowledge, and we cannot just, of course, some persons, for example, there are some Babajis, they're just staying in Radhakund or in Braj, and to them it doesn't matter who is the President of America. Even who is the President of India, they may not know, and they don't care, and they don't have to care. If they are from Braj, if they are from India, they don't need a passport, they don't need a visa, they can stay here. Even maybe they don't have another card, although maybe now it is required, but they don't really have to. And if one is fully engaged in devotional activities, and because in Braj, even the policemen, they have some knowledge, and they know. They are just Babajis, and they may not have another card, and they may not bother. Then there's no need if they are doing bhajan. But then there are others, for example, we have preaching movement, and so we have to preach to the common man. For that we need some common knowledge also, what is happening in the world. And as a householder also, that the children have to go to school, they have to be educated. Yeah, and then they must have some common knowledge also. And then they will, so then we have to know, because we are preaching to the common man, and then some topics may come up. So then we may need to know who is the president of, there's a new president, right, in America, new president,
I don't know the name, but I know that.
There's a new president. Trump is gone.
Trump has gone.
Okay, yeah.
This much I know.
Yeah. So then, so we may have to sometimes discuss, and some issues may be there. And then so you may see the news also. What is the news? Who is the president of America now? So that may be there. But then we have to see that we are not going too much into that. And then, for example, coronavirus is there. We have to know also what is coronavirus. In the beginning it was there, and then of course not so much bothered. But then still we have to know, and then we have to wear the mask, and then we have to have social distance. They all say this, and then so many things are there. So the mind is very tricky, and we have to be careful. Then this person is saying this about, or the new president about the virus, and then there's practically endless information is there also. I mean, you can now, especially with the internet and then Wi-Fi and whatever, so many informations are there. And then, well, in the material world also, because the conditioned soul is just naturally wanting to have some entertainment, some knowledge, and to be engaged also. And then so many things may be there, and we may think, okay, this message is there about the new president, what kind of person he is, and then, or about coronavirus, what this person is saying, what that person is saying. And so we have to be careful, because we need to know a little bit something, but at the same time we should see that we are not getting too much involved in that. So that instead of reading the Bhagavatam for 1 hour, we are on the internet for 1 hour, seeing what is happening in America, what is happening here in India, and what is happening with this virus and this and that. So many things are that.
It happens very
well. So that is there. So we have to be careful of the material mind, and because this, the mind is very, very tricky, and so therefore, we can say there's an endless list of Gramya Katha, and so basically what we have to be careful, and things which are not so important that we have to try to discard. So we may say that things are very bad, we should not indulge in that. See that the mind doesn't get diverted. Things which are not so bad or not so less detrimental, but still you have to be careful.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
Yes.
She got the answer.
Oh, she got the answer. Okay.
The question was, Prabhuji, talking about management and money of an organization engaged in preaching or charitable purpose is also a type of Gramya Katha. So she got the answer.
Yeah.
Prema Rupa Devidasi.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, so it is, we have to be very careful and be in the association of the devotees and try to be absorbed. So we have to see it as actually as a devotee we have two lives. One is a sadhaka, practicing devotee, and then one is, it is mentioned as siddha, on the transcendental plane, when we can be absorbed. In the beginning stage, one is more externally absorbed, but then we have to practice and try to see that we can be also a little bit internally absorbed in remembrance of Radha and Krishna, which is not easy, but one has to try, because ultimately if you are not absorbed in Radha and Krishna, then we will not go to them. Very simple. So, but it takes time, and one has to be very patient, and we have to see time, place and circumstances. If one is young, then one may be getting married, then one is more absorbed in the social life and taking care of the family, and then one is still engaged in devotional activities, and then one may hear about the essence, one may try to be absorbed a little bit in that, but the life has to go on in this world. If we have a child and the child is crying, we cannot just think, okay, let him cry, I have to now hear, I have to read about Krishna's pastimes in Golok, what Krishna is doing. But the crying child is there, you have to take care. And then you have to forget about you thinking about Krishna in Golok. So you have to see, practically. So time, place and circumstances you have to see. But as much as possible we have to hear about Krishna in Braj, about Krishna, about Mahaprabhu in Shetadip Navadvip. But we have to be balanced as a devotee also. And the external life is there, which has to be there. We have this body, we have to act according to one ashram that cannot be given up. Not possible. But then some spiritual internal absorption has to be attempted also. And so for sannyasis, they have to be more absorbed internally, and externally they don't have any duties.
Yeah.
And then even for householders, at a certain point, the 50, 60, then the children are grown up, then they will get married, then again they will have time to be more absorbed. But if you're just married, you have children, you have to take care of the child. Then that is your duty. If you're neglecting that, there is no question then you will be able to be absorbed. Because that is also duty, and that has to be performed. But you keep Krishna in the center while doing duty, and then you give the child, try to give the child Krishna. So in this way there's no harm. But it may be more difficult to be fully absorbed as a householder, especially when the children are there. But you try your best, but you should not neglect your duty as a husband, as a father, as a good son. If the parents are old, they have to be taken care of also. That is important. So therefore we have to see. And we should be always ready to serve Hari Guru Vaishnav. And the Vaishnavas, the spiritual master, the Lord, and others also. But we have to take care of ourselves also, that is there. But then we have to help others. That is important. But then at a certain point, then you can try to be more absorbed. And then you may withdraw from the external world also. But everything has its time. So you have to see time, place, circumstances. And it's good to be under the guidance of those who are more advanced, who can see the situation as it is. And then they can guide. They can help us. So we can do the things properly. Okay, anything else? Okay. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Krishna Kirtana Gana Natana Pano